This story is a work of fiction. Lanius flies silently. Chapter 3, Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, 11 a.m. The heart of Pangyo Second Techno Valley, Seongnam, Gyeonggi Province, Raptor Dynamics headquarters. Built with 15 stories above ground and 4 below, the Raptor Dynamics headquarters was a sleek, all-glass monolith that deflected the dazzling spring sunlight of Pangyo Second Techno Valley with its entire facade. Out front sat a lawn slowly regaining its verdant green with the onset of spring, alongside an incomprehensible modern art sculpture. From a famous franchise cafe located in the first-floor external arcade, easily recognizable by its green and white trademark, a subtle aroma of roasted coffee drifted into the air. Wearing a gray hoodie, dark slacks, and a black backpack, Soo-in Han stepped into the lobby with a nonchalant stride. The atmosphere in the lobby was peaceful to the point of feeling excessive, standing in stark contrast to the chaotic state of the outside world. There were simple security gates for access control, but no other visible mechanisms or personnel enforcing strict boundaries. At the expansive reception desk, where temporary visitors were meant to check in, a single elderly security guard in a blue uniform sat nodding off, lulled to sleep by the warm morning sun. Throughout the building, standard, highly visible dome CCTVs were installed. However, every time the intense midday sunlight struck and scattered across the gleaming marble floor of the lobby, anomalous, sharp optical reflections flashed from seams in the sleek wall decorations or corners of the ceiling fixtures, places where absolutely nothing should exist. It was an effect that standard building materials simply could not produce. It felt as though countless invisible eyes were momentarily glinting as they were exposed to the light, creating a bizarre, chilling sense of alienation. Watching those intermittent flashes of light, Soo-in narrowed her eyes ever so slightly. Just then, a young employee wearing a company ID badge approached with light steps. Sporting a bright, polite smile, he showed his badge and addressed her. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Soo-in Han? I'm from the Raptor Dynamics HR team. Allow me to escort you to the interview room." Soo-in accepted the temporary visitor badge with its long lanyard handed to her by the HR representative and placed it around her neck. Meanwhile, the representative provided instructions for the interview. "The interview will be held in the executive conference room on the 15th floor. Let's take the elevator over here." The two passed through the security gates, boarded the elevator, and ascended to the top floor, the 15th. Ding! 15th floor. As the automated voice chimed and the doors slid open, an atmosphere of an entirely different density greeted Soo-in, a stark departure from the first-floor lobby. While the executive offices and conference rooms tucked away in the back might have been different, the central corridor they were currently walking down was bordered entirely by transparent glass walls on both sides. It was an absolute open-plan office where the interior was completely exposed. Yet the scene radiating from within those glass walls was overwhelming. Dozens of young employees in their 20s and 30s, dressed in casual hoodies or comfortable crewnecks, sat in rigidly regimented desk arrangements that starkly contrasted with their relaxed attire. On their desks, a minimum of 4 massive monitors per person surrounded them like protective screens. Through the glass walls, inside those hundreds of monitors, a dizzying array of visuals flickered relentlessly. Constantly updating real-time data graphs, unidentified video feeds split into countless grids, and targeting boxes that seemed to be actively tracking something. The bluish glow of the monitors reflected off their faces as they mechanically pounded away at their keyboards. It felt akin to walking through the very core of a massive, transparent brain, looking down upon the world to analyze and record every single detail. As she walked down the corridor, Soo-in calmly scanned the colossal volume of data and video feeds pouring out from beyond the glass walls on either side. It was the exact moment her cold intuition, which she had shared with Sia Ryu a few days ago at the K University Dining Hall, predicting that this place has absolutely no interest in national defense or weaponry, but solely in surveillance and intelligence analysis, was confirmed, materialized right before her eyes into a flawless physical reality. Passing through the transparent central corridor of the 15th floor, they arrived at the executive conference room located at the edge of the building. The conference room was also partitioned by glass walls, but these were wrapped in an opaque film to prevent the outside from peering in. The HR representative opened the conference room door and said, "The interview panel is waiting for you inside." The entire back wall of the room was made of massive floor-to-ceiling glass. Through it, the dense forest of buildings in Pangyo's second techno valley and the people bustling about below could be seen at a glance, looking exactly like a meticulously crafted miniature model. The very essence of this corporation, seeking to look down upon and record the world from above, seemed perfectly encapsulated in that panoramic view. Across a wide mahogany conference table, 3 interviewers, impeccably dressed in sharp suits, were already seated at equal intervals, their gazes uniformly fixed upon the anomalous genius in the gray hoodie walking through the open doorway, Soo-in Han. The HR representative who had guided her politely pulled out an empty chair opposite the interviewers, the grand mahogany table standing between them. "You may take a seat right here." A typical job seeker would have entered completely rigid with nerves, stood at attention to offer a deep 90-degree bow, and only cautiously taken a seat after receiving explicit permission from the panel. However, Soo-in's mind immediately bypassed social etiquette, initiating a highly pragmatic calculation of efficiency. Those people sitting over there aren't standing up to greet me right now either, so there's really no need for me to offer a formal bow. But if I don't bow now, and they stand up to bow later, I'll have to stand back up to return the gesture, which is bothersome. Still gripping the straps of her backpack, Soo-in tossed out an incredibly casual nod, barely bending her waist. Then, without a single second of hesitation, she plopped down into the plush applicant's chair. She briefly scanned the area for a place to put her backpack, but feeling it was too awkward to leave it on the floor or hug it on her lap, she casually dropped it right onto the pristine interview table with a dull thud. It was her signature dry, calculated seating maneuver, completely oblivious to the scrutiny of others, aimed solely at preemptively eliminating any future inconveniences. The man seated on the far left, observing her with a mix of amusement and bewilderment as she sank deep into her chair and stared straight ahead with apathetic eyes, was the first to speak, offering a smooth smile. "Dr. Soo-in Han? A pleasure to meet you. I am the head of HR at Raptor Dynamics. The gentleman seated in the middle is the director of our new product development team, and the gentleman across from him is the software part leader within that same team. Because they are the operational leads, if you join us, these are the people you will be working directly with." Following the brief introduction, the new product development director and the software part leader gave slight, seated nods towards Soo-in. While the dazzling spring panorama of Pangyo stretched out endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the atmosphere inside the conference room was striking a bizarrely discordant note. This meeting was nominally an interview to assess her operational fit by the functional leads, but because it was a high-stakes scouting offer initiated by the Cobalt Group itself, it was essentially proceeding as a mere formality to confirm basic details. The new product development director sitting opposite her scanned Soo-in's prepared resume. With a confident smile and a highly animated voice, he began his pitch. "I thoroughly reviewed your doctoral dissertation, Dr. Han. Your specialty is swarm drone control, correct? When you join us, all you need to do is apply that to our new security CCTV drones. We will deploy drones en masse into every nook and cranny of the city. 24 hours a day, they will instantly detect any anomalous behavior suspected of being illegal and relentlessly track the criminals' movements in real time. Perfect public safety. Doesn't that sound spectacular?" It was the exact moment the chilling premonition she had discussed with Sia, Ryu, in the university cafeteria became a grim reality. It wasn't about national defense or saving lives. The sole purpose was to monitor and track people. Her high trait agreeableness, which naturally repelled the idea of controlling others, quietly triggered a deep sense of revulsion. But even before that emotional response, Soo-in's expertise instantaneously caught the fatal technical ignorance embedded in the director's statement. "I fail to see the correlation between deploying drones en masse to build a global, individual surveillance network, as you described, Director, and the principles of swarm control. Making numerous individual units communicate organically to control them as if they were a single living organism, a swarm, is fundamentally different in purpose and processing architecture from deploying multiple independent drone cameras over a wide area, using specific conditions on one camera to pinpoint a target, and then handing off the tracking of that target's trajectory from one camera to the next." However, the development director waved off her engineering skepticism with a dismissive chuckle. "Ha ha ha. Dr. Han, this isn't academia. Why does the theoretical explanation of that correlation matter? The important thing is that you simply produced the results to make it operate that way." At that arrogant response, Soo-in's apathetic eyes darkened by a microscopic fraction. She thought to herself, A man claiming to be a development director doesn't even know the difference between a global surveillance network and swarm control. It's obvious he merely skimmed the title of my dissertation. This isn't a place that seeks to research technology. It's nothing more than a den of merchants hawking surveillance cameras disguised with grandiose labels. Misinterpreting her silence as dissatisfaction with the terms, the HR director urgently leaned forward. Yet, with a secretive and ostentatious tone dripping with extreme arrogance, he placed a staggering sum on the table. Dr. Han, for a newly minted PhD, the base salary is 1 billion won, with incentives paid separately. To be perfectly frank, you won't find a single place anywhere in the world that offers this level of compensation to a recent graduate. It's only possible because we are Cobalt. A base salary of 1 billion won. $1 million. Faced with that surreal figure, a normal person would have lost their mind and cheered. But to Suin, it sounded like nothing more than an empty echo. It failed to alter her heart rate by even a single hertz. On the contrary, any fleeting thought of becoming a cog in this ignorant and greedy surveillance machine was completely erased from her mind. She stared impassively at the strap of the backpack she had placed on the table and spoke. "I have noted the salary figure." A thoroughly satisfied smile was spreading across the interviewers' faces, their expressions clearly reading. As expected, no one can resist that kind of money. However, shattering their expectations, Suin pushed her chair back and stood up, grabbing the strap of the backpack resting on the conference table. She snatched it up, slung it over her shoulder, and said in a dry monotone, "By the way, may I use the restroom?" Before the bewildered "excuse me" could even escape the interviewer's lips, she had already turned her body and, with an unhesitating stride, pulled open the heavy doors of the executive conference room and walked out. Having decisively rejected the $1 billion contract offered by the Cobalt Group in the 15th floor executive suite, Suin Han stepped back into the first-floor lobby. As always, with a nonchalant stride devoid of any emotional turbulence, she passed through the security gates. At the wide, cool reception desk in the lobby, the elderly security guard in the blue uniform she had seen that morning was still nodding off under the warm spring sun. Suin took off the temporary visitor badge she was wearing around her neck and placed it silently on the desk in front of the guard. It felt like her own quiet resignation letter, a refusal to become a cog in a machine built for control and surveillance. Passing through the massive automatic revolving glass doors, Suin exited the lobby, inhaling the crisp air of the concrete jungle, and muttered quietly to herself, "Work under people like that for $1 million a year just to churn out CCTVs for the rest of my life? Boring. I skipped breakfast today, I'm starving." She was standing blankly with her back to the massive, all-glass building, running calculations in her head to figure out what she was supposed to eat to survive right now, when it happened. Honk. Hoonk. A loud, obnoxious honking violently shredded the sophisticated silence of Pangyo Second Techno Valley. At the exact same time, a dilapidated 1-ton cargo truck, spewing thick black exhaust, came barreling fiercely toward the gleaming glass facade of the Raptor Dynamics building, slamming on its brakes right in the middle of the strictly controlled VIP-only parking zone, as if to show off. Screech! Startled awake by the friction of the tires and the chaotic honking, the elderly security guard frantically looked around in a panic. He quickly spotted the monstrosity of a truck, illegally occupying the VIP zone outside the transparent revolving doors while belching black smoke, and ran out of the lobby with a glowing traffic baton, his face pale with shock. Just then, the window of the rattling truck rolled down, and Xia Ryu, wearing cheap plastic sunglasses and sporting a mess of tangled hair, shoved her head out. Her expression was burning with an explosive drive, looking ready to smash through anything in her path. She grunted, trying her hardest to lower her sunglasses in a cool, dramatic way, but eventually gave up and screamed at the top of her lungs to be heard over the rough roar of the old engine. "Hey, Suin! What's with that look on your face? What did those corporate boomers say to you?" "I knew it. You bombed the interview, didn't you?" Despite Xia's sudden, typhoon-like intrusion, Suin wasn't startled in the slightest. She merely scanned the exhaust-spewing truck and blinked a couple of times. "What are you doing here? And what's with the ride? Where did you scavenge this thing?" Xia slammed her hand against the steering wheel and shouted cheerfully, like a conqueror who had just claimed the world. "I quit. Threw my corporate badge away and bought this truck with my severance pay. Hey, cut the chatter and get in. Don't look back. Let's go grab some hearty soup." "I've got a killer plan." The security guard, who had sprinted over from the lobby, shouted with veins popping in his neck. "You cannot park here. Move your vehicle immediately." But Sia didn't listen to a single word of it. Reaching across, she forcefully threw open the passenger side door. Standing between the truck and the building, Soo-in momentarily shifted her gaze. On one side stood the sleek, cold glass building, promising comfort and $1 million salary, but at the cost of being reduced to a component that monitored others. On the other side sat the noisy, dilapidated one-ton cargo truck reeking of exhaust, where she would have to worry about tomorrow's meals immediately, and inside it, reaching out fiercely toward her, was Sia Ryu, her sole confidant and savior. For Soo-in, who had always interpreted the world through code, devoid of emotion, a microscopic, almost imperceptible 0.1 millimeter smile, yet one holding a faint warmth, spread across her lips. For someone who despised controlling the freedom of others, the right answer might have been set in stone from the very beginning. Placing one foot into the passenger seat of the truck, she tossed out a remark in her signature dry tone, laced with the tiniest hint of warmth. "Yeah, can't say no to soup." The instant Soo-in climbed into the rusty truck and slammed the door shut, Sia stomped on the accelerator aggressively, as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. Room! With the deafening roar of the engine, a thick cloud of black exhaust enveloped the VIP parking zone. Leaving the massive corporate monolith of Pangyo behind, the beat-up one-ton cargo truck shot fiercely forward.